Welcome aboard the Boat Buyer's Secret Weapon podcast, where we're dedicated to helping first-time and experienced boat buyers find the right boat at the best price so they have years and years of boating fun, because life truly is better on a boat. Today's podcast is sponsored by the Boat Buyer's Secret Weapon Toolkit, packed with inspection checklists, questions to ask private sellers and dealers, ownership calculators, how to sea trial a boat the right way, and much more. And it's all yours free at boatbuyerssecretweapon.com/toolkit. And the magic money saving method, the insider's way to getting the best deal on your new or used boat. Check out the video at boatbuyerssecretweapon.com/save. Now, let's hop aboard and have some fun. Welcome to the Boat Buyer's Secret Weapon podcast. I'm your host, Captain Matt. I want to welcome you aboard, where we're dedicated to helping first-time and experienced boat buyers find the right boat at the best price so they have years and years of boating fun, because life truly is better on a boat. Today's podcast sponsor is the Boat Buyer's SecretWeapon.com website. You can go to the BoatBuyerSecretWeapon.com site, and we have some great resources there for you, the podcast, videos, as well as access to boat insurance, boat financing resources, and our most powerful tool, the Boat Buyer's Toolkit, which the big thing with that is the secret weapon on how to negotiate to ensure you pay the lowest price possible for the perfect boat. So today, what are we talking about? Insider secrets to buying a used pontoon or Tri-Toon. The pontoon and Tri-Toon market continues to grow, continues to be a huge portion of the overall boat sales on the new and pre-owned side, and pre-owned is oftentimes a great way to go. If you haven't listened to the new versus pre-owned podcast, you might want to go check that out. You can go to boatbuyerssecretweapon.com and check it out there, or you can go to iTunes. You can go to the YouTube channel, Captain Matt at the YouTube channel, or you can just search new boat versus used boat. I think we'll probably get you to it, and that is a great episode there. So I'm going to assume you've made the decision that going with the used pontoon or Tri-Toon fits the budget best, makes the most sense for us. So we're going to start, as we always do, with the decisions, the questions that you need to ask yourself. And the first question is, hey, should we get a pontoon or should we get a Tri-Toon? And you may wonder yourself, well, what exactly is the difference? So we're going to start real basic here. And you can see in the top images, the Tri-Toons, 3 tunes. It's various ways that they do them. They can all be the same size. The middle tube can be an oval shape. The middle tune can be a oblong shape, or whatever. I don't know what that shape you would call it. But those, all 3 on the top in the blue, are what we would call a Tri-Toon or a triple tube or tri-tube pontoon, whatever term you want to use. It just means that there's 3 tunes versus a traditional pontoon at the bottom, which would be considered a pontoon. So a pontoon has 2 of the center tube, or 2 of the tubes supporting it and giving it the flotation. Now, advantages and disadvantages. Well, with the Tri-Toon, you have a third more flotation, or even more depending on the style of that middle tube. So it gives you additional flotation, which gets you higher up in the water. It also allows you more structural support, because you've got basically another beam down the entire center of the boat versus the pontoon. So you get additional buoyancy, additional lift out of the water. It gives you additional stability. It also gives you some additional maneuvering ability. Because of that extra tune, it gives you additional maneuverability, making sharper turns, getting around back to a skier or down somebody on a tube or a wakeboard. So there's advantages to the Tri-Toon in the maneuverability department. But the major one I want you to think about is, If you're looking to put a lot of weight on the boat, so you're going to be out with 8 to 10 people consistently and you still want some speed, then a Tri-Toon is a great way to go. If you are out in the water and you're on a rough body of water, the Lake of the Ozarks, you boat on the coast and you're in the intercoastal waterway with some bigger vessels. You're on the Great Lakes or just a larger Lake Havasu, a larger body of water. The Tri-Toon is the way I would start leaning. If you're on a smaller body water, if you boat on the weekdays and you don't want to go out there when it's real rough, you're not going to put a ton of weight on the boat. You're not really concerned about going extra fast. Going 20, 25 miles an hour is plenty fast for you. Then the Pontoon with the two tunes is going to save you some money, and it's going to be an adequate boat for your needs. So the other advantage to the Pontoon, the additional buoyancy, the additional structural support, you can actually put a larger horsepower engine on a Tri-Toon because of that extra structural support. They're rated for higher horsepower, and I'm going to go into horsepower and what recommendations that I'll give you there, where it makes sense to go to the Tri-Toon and where it makes sense to stay at the Pontoon. So that is one of the first choices: is do I want to search for a used Pontoon or a used Tri-Toon? The next is, do I want a stern drive or do I want an outboard? Now, these days, a majority of the pontoons are outboards. The one on the right, that black one, you've got the outboard Mercury hanging off the back. You can see that big engine is just hanging off the full back of the boat. The one on the left is called a stern drive, where a portion of the engine is actually inside the boat, and you've got the lower unit sticking out the back with the prop on the back. Now, advantages to that stern drive layout is you have easy access to the water. That motor's tucked up behind or even under the boat, the way they typically will design it, and you've got easy access to the water for the back of the boat. Now, my personal recommendation is stay away from a stern drive pontoon. They can be very difficult to work on because of the way they build them. They are putting them in the pontoon, and they can be difficult to get access to different things, and they can also be somewhat loud and have additional vibrations that the outboard motors do not these days, especially in the last 5 to 10 years. The outboards have gotten extremely efficient, extremely quiet, and extremely low maintenance. So for most people, unless you absolutely positively have to have that out access to the water in the back of the boat, I'm going to say stay away from the stern drives, especially if you're over 10 or 15 years old. The issues that are commonplace with those, not all of them, but they're much more common to have mechanical issues, because it just, things are tougher to work on, and when things are tough to work on, the maintenance tends to get skipped sometimes, and there can be some major issues. So I'm gonna recommend to you that if you're looking at a used pontoon or Tri-Toon, I'm gonna recommend that you go with the outboard. It's gonna have better resale. It's gonna be easier to resell. It's gonna have better resale value if you take care of it well, and you will have a lot more options. The stern drives, they have them as options still today on new ones, but you're likely going to be happier with the outboard in this particular style. Now, once you've decided pontoon or Tri-Toon, stern drive or outboard, you've got to decide about what horsepower do we need. And you'll notice I'm starting with the 50 horsepower. One of the biggest mistakes I see people making when they're looking at a pontoon is they put too small of a motor on it because they're looking to save money. Now, what I want you to understand is what activities you can do with different horsepowers. Now, I'm going to assume that you're a 22 to 24 foot boat on these, maybe a 25 or 27 as we get into the bigger horsepowers. But at 50, a 20 22, 24-foot boat with a 50 horsepower is going to go slow. It's going to be great for slow cruising. It's going to be very efficient. If you just want to get out, put some people on the boat and putt around, you are going to be totally fine with the 50. But understand, you're not going to go much faster than with, 4 or 6 people on the boat and a full fuel and gear. You're not going to go much above 20 miles an hour, maybe even 18 with that many people on the boat. It's going to be a slow cruise, and you're going to be running the boat at pretty high RPMs, which is another thing to consider. You don't really want to buy a boat that you're going to have to run wide open throttle to get the performance, because that's very, very rough on the engines. It's like just putting your car and putting the pedal all the way to the floor and running for 2 hours. That would cause major damage to your car engine. The same thing can happen with your boat engine, although they are designed to run at higher RPMs. So if you want to maybe do some water sports with the kids, do some tubing, maybe a little bit of skiing with little kids, a 90 horsepower would be the next step up. Now you'll notice I don't go through 50, 60, 70, 75 like Mercury, Yamaha, Suzuki. All the outboard manufacturers will have some different breaks in the middle. But here's what I'll tell you is there is very little difference other than some of the technology between the smaller gaps in the outboard horsepower. So just if you're looking at a 75, just understand it's going to be somewhere in the middle there, but closer to the 50 performance. Slow tubing with the kids on a 22 or a 24-foot boat, you're not going to get going real fast. Depending on the style of the boat, depending on the weight in the boat, you may be able to go low 20s on a perfect day. Maybe you're getting up into the mid 20s. But that's going to be enough to put a kid on a tube back there and pull them around slowly. Typically younger kids, the older, 15, 16-year-old kids are going to get bored pretty quickly with that. You move up to the 115, and now you can start doing some skiing. You can maybe get up into the 30-mile-an-hour range, high 20s, low 30s, depending on the weight in the boat. The more people you're going to have in the boat, the lower your performance, especially on a pontoon. Remember, you're only being supported by 2 of the tunes, so your flotation, your buoyancy is going to sink further down into the water, which means that engine's going to have to push more of the boat through the water versus the Tri-Toons. They will rise up and have more buoyancy, ride higher on the water, and they will skim across the top of the water, giving you even better performance with that engine. So my recommendation to you is, if you are looking to do some skiing with adults, you want to have some speed, that you take the move to the Tri-Toon and the 150. Putting 150 horsepower on a pontoon will give you a step above the 115, but it's not going to be significant. You need that extra buoyancy to get the boat on top of the water for that 150 to really do its work, and to get that boat, skip it across. That I'm over 200 pounds, and I slalom skied behind a 24-foot Tri-Toon with the 150. I got up, and I'm a good skier. I've been skiing for a long time, so I was able to get up pretty easily, and was able to cut and have a good time with the 150. So that's going to give you the options that almost any fiberglass boat would give as far as the performance. You're going to run high 30s, maybe into the low 40s. Again, the more weight you put on the boat, people, fuel, gear, coolers, those numbers are going to drop down considerably. But I skied, I think there were 5 people on the boat, and at 200 plus pounds, I slalom skied on one. So the next step up is around a 225 or a 250 horsepower, that's going to give you the speed to go almost 50 miles an hour on a 24, 25, 26-foot boat. You're going to be in the high 40s for sure, depending on the other options you have on the boat, maybe into the 50-mile-an-hour range on a perfect day with only 2 people on the boat. But that's, hey, we're going to load it up with 8 to 10 people, and we still want to do some water sports. We still want to get some speed. We want to be a fast boat. Then you want to start looking towards that 200, 225, 250 horsepower range. Then you get into the 300s and even the 400 horsepower now, the 425 that Yamaha has released last year or this fall. That's going to be as fast as any other boat on the water or faster, okay? So that's going to give you, hey, I need to be fast. Then you need to start looking into the 300 horsepower range, and then you move to some of the twin engine options that you're not going to find many of these on the used boat market, but you go that direction because it looks badass. You want to go that direction because of the looks of the turning heads of the, wow, that's got twins on a pontoon. That's where you're going to look on the horsepower. But I think that breakdown makes it real easy for you to start zeroing in. Maybe a 90 to a 115 is where you want to look. Or maybe you say, you know what? We do need to go to the 115, and that's where we're going to be happiest. Or here's the reason I'm doing these videos is because I don't want you to buy a pontoon with a 115 and then wish you would have spent the extra $3 or $4 or $5,000 to get the 150 Tri-Toon and have that big gap in performance, or buy the 50 and you wish you would have got the 90, because there are some drastic differences in the way the boat will perform, the things that you can do on them, and this gives you just a generic, not to any specific brand. Be careful of salespeople telling you that, oh, a 50 horsepower, you can go 30 miles an hour. Well, it's just not possible. So I want you to have the real information, so that you can make the decision before you start shopping and before you fall in love with the boat or find a great deal, and you know that, hey, this is the right boat first. We'll worry about the great deal. I want you to ask the right negotiation questions and buy it for the best price you can possibly get at boatbuyerssecretweapon.com. You can get that to save hundreds, thousands, and likely for some of you, tens of thousands of dollars. But getting the right boat first is key. So let's look next. The next choice you need to make is the layout. Hey, there's a bunch of different layouts. It's as I record this, boat show season is going on. I've talked to people in the industry at 200 different pontoons at a boat show with dozens of different types of layouts. But I want to break it down into just the basics to get you thinking about, hey, how are we going to use the boat and what layout should we start zeroing in on? So you've got your fishing setups that have either 2 or 4 fishing seats in the front and or in the back of the boat, depending on the exact layout. But if fishing is 70-80% of what you're going to do, then lean towards that fishing setup. If you do a lot of entertaining, there's some bar options or some entertaining options that are pretty cool out there. If you go to the sandbar, you go anchor out to Party Cove, or you just sit in the dock and you entertain at the marina or at your home on the lake. The bar entertainment setup could be a great fit for you. You can start searching specifically for those. If you have some people that are sun worshipers, you like to lounge, you want to go anchor out and get some sun, you want to kick back and relax, the loungers for sunning and seating, they've got some great options with big, huge lounges in the back. They've got other options that have 4 loungers, 2 in the front, 2 in the back. Some of them are called center walkthroughs that have that type of setup. That could be great. And then you have your traditional L-shape seating with the couches, the L-shape in the back, that little L-shaped couch in the back, 2 couches up front, and then you've got your driver's helm station with a seat there. That's the traditional pontoon. You can find those everywhere. Every manufacturer has made those in the last 5 to 10 years. You started to see the loungers and the entertaining areas coming up, and the fishing pontoons have been out there for a long time as well. So depending on what your budget is, some of these may be available for you, some of them may not or be harder to come by. But just think about how you're going to use it and what layout of the boat is going to make the most sense for you, and that's going to help your search. Okay. The next thing is, once you've found the right boat, and I don't have this in a slide, but I want to mention this. As you're looking for your boat, I've had my brother one time drove halfway across the country to buy a used boat. He went from the Midwest out to the East Coast and found a great boat online. Made the offer, pulled their boat out to the East Coast and hauled their new boat back, and they had a great experience. It was a boat that he kept for probably 7 or 8 years, and had just a great experience with that boat before he moved up to his next one. But I want you to consider the expense of hauling a boat back home with you, the drive out there, the haul back, the fuel that you're gonna pay for, hotels, the overnighting, just that overall expense, and just make sure that you're not doing it to save $500 or $700, that there's substantial savings, or it is the absolute perfect boat for you that you can't find anywhere local. Because I want you to include that in the cost of buying the boat, that trip. Although from my brother and my cousin that made that trip, they had a great story, and that was part of what they enjoyed about it. So we're going to assume that you found the right boat. You've been online, you've been to the dealer's website, you found it on Boat Trader from a private seller. There was a broker that had it on consignment or brokerage, and you've got the right boat. It's got the right. It's a pontoon or Tri-Toon with the right engine, with the right horsepower, with the right layout, maybe the right color even. Couple things that I want you to make sure that you check out. The first is the floor sturdy. Pontoons are made with plywood. They're typically marine grade plywood and very durable, and most of them have a lifetime warranty, in the last 5 to 10 years. But sometimes you'll have a cheaper manufacturer, or there's some defect, or there's something that happened. It was poorly taken care of. The cover was never put on. It was left outside, and you can see that there's soft spots in the floor. So what I want you to do is, when you're on the boat, I want you to just make sure that you kind of bounce up and down on different portions of the boat, and even if the floor is exposed under the seating, I want you to kind of put some pressure in there and just make sure that everything is sturdy and solid, that you don't have any rot under the carpet, under the flooring that you don't see. I want to make sure that you don't buy something that seems like a great deal, but there is a major issue under that floor that, just being a little bit slower and more methodical in your inspection, you would have found it. So, just kind of bounce up and down, use your body weight, and if you feel any sags, if you feel something that feels soft, then do a little more digging. And as I always say, there's always another boat, especially when you're looking pre-owned or used. There's always going to be another boat out there that will suit your needs, if you're patient and you keep looking. So don't buy something that may be just a money pit. Check under the pontoon. Mention the soft floor. If it's a pontoon, you can easily see a big portion of the floor. But even if it's Tri-Toon, there may be some aluminum skin under there that protects the flooring, which is great. But you want to look under there. Are there missing rivets? Is there some rot that you can see? Are there wires that are torn or cut? Anything under the boat. This may require that you get on your hands and knees, that you crawl under that boat. But if you're making a 5, 10, 20, $50,000 investment, you're going to want to just take that little extra look and make sure that everything looks right under the pontoon as well. Are there dents in the pontoon? Are there any major issues that you see as you're looking around that would cause concern? Are there any missing screws or bolts that would cause you concern? The next is we'll move to the electronics, whether there's fish finders, depth finders, any of that electronic stuff. You want to make sure that the boat has a good battery in it, and that you start flipping switches and checking everything out on the electronics. The upholstery and the canvas. The upholstery, it's going to be very noticeable. Open all of the seats, make sure that all of the hinges are strong, or if they're not, at least you know about it. Make sure that there's no rot in the seat cushions. Put some weight on the seat cushions and make sure that there's no rot there. A lot of the boats in the last 5 years or so have gone to a starboard plastic type material, which is much more durable, but can crack. If a big person stands on it, it can crack. So you want to check the upholstery and the seating. Does everything feel right? Is there mold or mildew in the cracks and crevices that has started? And check the canvas as well. The canvas covers, whether it's the bimini top or the actual boat cover, are there missing snaps? Are there rips? Are there tears? Is there sun fading? Anything that maybe not a big deal to you, maybe totally cosmetic, but I want you to be aware of everything, especially when you buy a used boat, because if you just go through it real quick and fall in love with the boat without checking these things out, sometimes what can happen is you find a major issue or just a nuisance that drives you crazy when you're out on the water. So just check those things. It's going to have some issue. Every used boat will have an issue or multiple issues. I want you to know where to look to find those issues so that you can make the decision, am I happy with these issues, or do I walk away and look for the next one? Lights, gauges, switches. I want you to, again, make sure there's a good battery in the boat, and I want you to go through every switch. What's it do? So if you do buy that boat, what everything is, because it may or may not still be labeled. You may be worn off, or maybe they put something in. Does everything work? Are the lights working? The navigation lights, the red, green up front, the anchor light in the back. Does the stereo work? Do the gauges work? Everything at the helm, what works, what doesn't. Are there any switches broken? Is there anything broken at the helm? The hatches and latches. Go through every compartment and just make sure, hey, it works. That we have the key to unlock it. If there's a key, is there anything that's not matching up? That when you open it up, the hinges are broken and it falls off. That's okay, but I want you to know about it. Wiring and corrosion. Now, this is important on a pontoon. I want you to look at the battery. Want you to see, is there major corrosion on the battery? Are the wires looking good? Does it look like the owner or a previous owner has added something and there's, it's a rat's nest of wires leading up to the battery? Maybe an issue that you're going to have electrical issues down the line. If that scares you and it looks not right, then I want you to ask some questions or have a professional look at it. The other area I wanted to look for corrosion is at the fuel water separator, which is back by the engine. If you just look at everything back by the engine, you'll notice corrosion if there's corrosion back there. Maybe an indication that it was in salt water. That one's not the kiss of death, but it raises a red flag that, hey, this boat's had some harder life to it, and I need to be even more cautious of the issues that I do find, because there may be some more hidden ones. And then look under the helm. I want you to look at the back of the wiring in the helm station where the steering wheel is, where likely the stereo is. Is there any corrosion back there? Is there anything that looks off when you start going through the wiring? Is it a big mess of wires and there's no rhyme or reason to it, or does it look like it's in pretty good order and everything is clean with limited corrosion? And then run the stereo system. Make sure that you know what speakers work, what doesn't. Does the CD player work? Does the MP3 player work? Does it have an 8-track tape or a cassette player? Are you going to have to spend $200 or $300 to put a new stereo in? What's your current status? And are you happy with that? Or, hey, I know I'm going to upgrade the stereo anyway, then it's not a big deal, but I want you to inspect those areas so you know what you've got. The engine. when you're buying a pontoon or a tri-toon, on the new side especially, the boat is about 50% of the cost. The engine is about 50% of the cost. That on as a ballpark statement. So the engine is a major part of the cost of a boat. And on the used side, you need to ask some questions. Hey, what are the engine hours? Do you have it? Does it have a meter on it? Kind of like an odometer. It's called an hour meter. Or on some of the newer engines, they can pull it from a computer and they can pull that off and they can tell you what the engine hours have been run. Check the engine oil and fluids. Ask what's the maintenance records. Do you have those? Check the oil yourself. Is it light and oily, or is it dirty and gritty? Is it black and gritty? That could be an indication that there's some issues. Have they changed the fluids? Have they changed the impeller? And then, if you know this is a boat that you're seriously considering, I'm going to recommend that you have a professional, or if you're competent, pull compression on all cylinders of the engine. What that means is they can put a little gauge on each cylinder of the engine, and they can see, is it firing as strong as it did when it was new, and they'll have the specs of every engine, and they'll know it should be 120 pounds of compression in each cylinder, 180 pounds of compression, whatever it is for that boat. Is it in the right range? And if it's not, I'm going to recommend that you walk away from that boat, because it's likely going to have a major expense coming up for you, and the owner may not even know. I've had situations where owners didn't even know that there was low compression on a cylinder until they went to sell it, and the buyer had the compression pulled on it, which will cost you maybe an hour of labor, so 120, 150 bucks. But again, when you're making that purchase, it's money well spent. A lot of times when you do that compression, they'll hook it up to the computer if it's a newer engine, and they can pull the engine hours as well as the RPM history. So they can say it ran this many hours in this RPM range, this many hours in this RPM range, this many hours in this RPM range, and you can see, did they leave it sitting idling for a bunch of hours, or were they running the boat, or were they running it wide open throttle and they were going as fast as they could the whole time and putting a lot of stress on the engine. And that's something that, if you're buying a more expensive boat, I would recommend you may even ask a mechanic to do that part as well. And then the prop condition. Is the prop in good shape? Does it have dings? Is it the right size prop for that engine? And that's something, again, you can ask a professional to match those up and see if you have the right prop for the right type of boat, the right way you're going to use it, and the horsepower and the type of engine you have. All of those things should be done before you write that check. And that should lead you to the test drive. Maybe you do it at the same time, maybe you do it at a different time. But when you do these inspections and then you continue the inspection on the test drive, it'll ensure that you're making a smart decision. So the first thing I would say is, when you get to the test drive, try to do a cold start. A cold start is, you're the first one that started that engine that day. So they didn't have a chance to start it up and get all the cobwebs out and get it fired up so that the next time it starts real easy. You want to know, does it just crank up the way it should? If you can't do it, sometimes it's not possible because they had to drive the boat to you or whatever. But if you can, ask to do a cold start. Listen to it at idle while the boat's just sitting there idling. Does it sound right? Does it sound smooth? Does it sound rough? Does it sound the way an engine should sound? Now, a two-stroke is going to sound different than a four-stroke. A Yamaha is going to sound different than a Mercury. A Mercury is going to sound different than a Suzuki. An Evinrude is going to sound different. A Johnson's going to sound different. But you want to listen to it, and does it sound right? Does it sound good? You can even go online and find these sounds of these different engines running, and you'll get a sense for it. As you do your test drive, you want to take it out and you want to go from idle, which is just the boat in gear. If you're not a boater, if the first time it's just putting that throttle just a little bit forward, so you're just barely moving forward, that's idle speed. And then you want to go to wide open throttle. Make sure you're in a big open area. Make sure you're being safe. Make sure it's appropriate for that lake. But go to wide open throttle and see, how does the boat accelerate? How does it feel when it gets up on top of the water? Does it get up on top of the water? About what's your top speed? Like I said, I gave you the bands that they'll be about and what you can do, but download a GPS speedometer on your cell phone and put that there so you know what the speeds look like, and make sure you're happy with that. Okay. Don't run wide open throttle for 20 minutes, but you can run wide open throttle for a couple of minutes and get the sense of it. Throttle back slowly. How does it feel? Does it start to cut out if you throttle back a little bit at some point, or does it smoothly throttle back and the engine sounds good all the way through? Then I want you to do is take it up to about 3/4 throttle. Again, make sure it's safe based on the water that you're on. And then I want you to do a nice sharp turn. How does it turn? How does it maneuver? Does it feel safe? Does it feel confident? Is the prop spinning out? Is there something odd going on when you're in 3/4 throttle and you do a turn, you do a maneuver? Does it feel right? Does it handle properly? Does it turn easy? Does it turn hard? So you know what it will be like when you're out on the water. And then if it's equipped, you can adjust the trim, the angle of the motor. Can it take a little bit of trim or not? That's going to tell you is, hey, how is this when I'm actually running this boat? Am I going to have some control of it? Does it trim a little bit and get even more speed? Or if I trim, the prop spins out and I don't have that option, which is okay. Some models would be like that, but I want you to know. And if it happens consistently, if the prop spins out or cavitates is what it called when you're in a turn, or when you put just a little bit of trim in, hey, maybe that's something that you want to step away from. Maybe it's not a big deal depending on how you see yourself using the boat. Then in the middle of the water, I want you to go in gear, out of gear, into reverse, into neutral, into forward, into neutral, into forward. Does it shift smoothly? Does the shift move easily? Does it sound smooth in the engine, or is it jerking, or is it doing anything out of the ordinary? Now, if you're a first-time boater, what I want you to do is watch some videos, maybe go to the water and listen to some other engines, listen to people doing it with theirs and see how it should sound and how it should feel. But doing that is just it'll throw up an indication if there's an issue. Now, you don't want to go in and out of gear at wide open throttle and pull it all the way back. You want to go easy with it, but you do want to go back and forth through forward, neutral, reverse, neutral, forward. And then also look for water spitting out of the engine. You can see that red arrow on the image, that little stream of engine spitting out. That tells you that the impeller is working properly. If there's a low flow, it's not streaming out with some decent force. When you're going, it may not have a ton of force if you're just sitting at idle at the dock. But when you're going, check it out. Make sure that it's peeing with a good stream of force. If not, maybe an indicator that there's an impeller that needs to be changed, and I want you to know about that as well. Okay. A great inspection that is often missed is inspecting the trailer. A great time to do it is when the boat's in the water for the sea trial or for the demo or for the test drive. You want to take a look at the trailer. Check that winch stand and the straps. Is the strap solid? Is there rust? Is there corrosion anywhere? Do the lights work? Test it out. Make sure that the lights work properly, that the bunks are in good shape, that there's not rot. If it's got wooden bunks, that there's no rot, that the carpet's good, that there's no big nail sticking out or a screw sticking out, and that the carpet's in good shape. If it's some of the newer kind of hard rubber, that those are all attached properly. Check the axles and the bearings. I heard a story the other day about somebody that drove off the lot they bought from a dealer. They were told everything's good to go. He had a 300-mile drive home, pulled out of it, and 10 minutes into the drive, he hit a curb or something, pulling out of a parking lot, and the axle snapped. Now you're stuck with a new boat on a broken trailer, nothing to do, and your exciting day turned into a terror, turned into a nightmare. So check those things out. Is there rust? Does it look good? Are there some leaks? Are the tires worn? Are they bald? And make sure you spin them around. Don't just look at the tires from the top side, but actually move that trailer back and forth so you can see, is there tread on the tires? Ask when they've been last time they've been changed. Is there dry rot? Are there cracks that you can see on the walls of the tires, inside and on the interior of the trailer and on the outside of the trailer? Double check those things. Trailer tires are $150 or so. If you've got a dual axle trailer, that's several, maybe even $1,000 worth of tires to by the time you have them balanced and rotated and all that. And it's easiest to do all this while the boat's off the trailer because you can actually see everything and determine if it's in good shape. So that's going to get you through the boat. If everything's looking good, start checking out your financing. There's a podcast on this, a video on this as well that you can check out at boatbuyerssecretweapon.com. But when you're financing a used boat, you can look at your local and national banks. You're going to find that their rates and terms aren't as competitive on used boats. It's a market that unless you find one that specifically specializes in boats, in marine lending, they're probably not going to have a great program for you. Local credit unions often do have great programs for boats because they lend based on relationships. You may be able to find a no money down opportunity with a longer term and a good low rate. Marine lenders are typically going to ask for 10 to 20% down. Their rates are going to vary based on your credit, obviously, but they are going to ask for a down payment. But they will typically go for a long term, and you can buy a $10,000 or $20,000 boat for 100, 200, 250, 300 a month, depending on your credit. The dealer's lender, if you are buying from a dealer, what I recommend is check with the local credit union, check with an independent marine lender, which you can find one at boatbuyerssecretweapon.com, and check with the dealer's lender if you're buying from a dealer, and pick the one that makes the most sense for what's important to you. And again, if you're financing, you want to learn more, go check out the financing option at Boat Buyer's Secret Weapon. There's a great podcast on that as well. Insurance. Now, I don't know exactly what you're looking at, but $300 to $1,000 a year for most types of pontoons that we're talking about. Now, if you get a twin engine that goes 100 miles an hour, which they're out there are pontoons that I think 102 or 112 is the fastest pontoon on record at the Lake of the Ozarks shootout, and I've seen one go 90 some. It's pretty funny watching a pontoon go that fast. But if you're buying a Tri-Toon with a 225, you're going to be closer to 1,000. If you're getting a 20-foot pontoon with a 50 horse, you're going to be closer to 300 for your boat insurance. So again, if you're interested in insurance, you can go check out that podcast, the video at YouTube or boatbuyerssecretweapon.com, and we go into more detail. But just to give you a ballpark of what that will look like. And finally, to ensure you get the best price, as you know, what we give all this information for free. We do have a special boat buyers package that you can get the best negotiation secret to ensure you get the absolute best price when you're buying your next boat. New, used, pontoon, Tri-Toon, doesn't matter, from a dealer, from a private seller, it doesn't matter. But this technique it will save you hundreds, likely thousands, and maybe even tens of thousands of dollars, depending on the exact boat that you're looking to buy. And that technique I'll give to you. And the money you invest to get that technique, you'll win back or earn back many times over, because this technique can be used when you buy virtually anything and it will save you thousands and thousands of dollars, and it's yours for a fraction of that. So you can go to boatbuyerssecretweapon.com/save to get that. Thank you very much. I appreciate you joining us. If you have questions, you can put them down below in the comments. If you got a lot out of this video, I would love it if you gave it a thumbs up. If you put a comment, nice job, thanks for the information. Or again, if you've got questions, put your question there. I may make a totally separate video, or I may just answer your question directly on the forum. But either way, I'll get that information to you. And thank you very much for checking this out. And as always, don't just think about buying a boat. Go out there and buy that boat, because life truly is better on the water. Thanks a lot. Hey, again, real quick, I'd like to thank the sponsors for this podcast, BoatBuyersSecretWeapon.com, where your boating resources are available, whether it's boat financing, boat insurance, or to ensure that you get the absolute positively best price on the next boat that you buy. You can go to boatbuyerssecretweapon.com/save to get that there. There's lots of other podcasts, lots of other videos that that you can grab there, as well as several vendors that have been confirmed by us that they're top-notch providers, that you're going to have a great experience with them. And again, we would love to have you utilize our services. It's how we support this podcast, these video series. It's how we continue to provide this valuable information to you and others that are searching to buy their first or their next boat. So until next time, remember, life is better on a boat. Take care. Well, it's time to pull up the anchor and run this podcast back to the dock. We'll be back again with another helpful and fun episode. If you'd like to be a guest on the podcast, visit us at boatbuyerssecretweapon.com/guest, and I'll help offer insights into your boat research and shopping experience. We'd also appreciate it if you gave the podcast a review on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts, so we know how we're doing. It also helps others find us, which is a big help. You can also share with your boating friends and boating groups on social media. They'll certainly thank you. By the way, if you haven't already, be sure to grab your free Boat Buyer's Secret Weapon Toolkit with inspection checklists, questions to ask, calculators, how to sea trial a boat the right way, and much, much more. You can pick up your copy at boatbuyerssecretweapon.com/toolkit today. Already found the perfect boat and want to ensure you don't pay too much? Check out the magic money saving method at boatbuyerssecretweapon.com/save for a short video. And now a few first time boating tips for when you've bought your new boat. Number 1, at the boat ramp, prepare your boat, your gear, your guests in the staging area. Then head back down the ramp, unload, and head to the parking lot. Be courteous to your fellow boaters, and don't tie that ramp up unnecessarily with things that should be done in the staging area. It'll make you a lot more boating friends. Number 2, this could save you an expensive ticket, and it's a personal pet peeve of mine. Boats do not have headlights. They have docking lights. They're specifically made for seeing in tight quarters and docking. Please, 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 please do not run your docking lights while running down the lake or the waterway. It will cause other boaters night blindness, and it can be very dangerous, and it's incredibly rude to those other boaters. Plus, as I said, it can land you with a very, very expensive ticket. Number 3, pay attention to your wake at all times. When maneuvering at slow speeds, you can put out an enormous wake. Be sure to be at idle speed, which is just in forward gear, to ensure there's no wake, no extra throttle. Again, this can save you a very expensive ticket, and it's courteous to your fellow boaters. Number 4, follow the maintenance schedule for your boat, changing the oil, the impeller, the gear loop, winterizing before the first major freeze if you freeze in your area, and checking your tires and your hubs and keeping those bearings greased. It will help you ensure that you don't experience an expensive and an unnecessary repair. Keeping up with that general maintenance will ensure that you have a much more fun and enjoyable boating lifestyle and have fewer problems that arise. Number 5, Always double check your plug is in, that your battery is charged, and the fuel is full before heading out for a day on the water. Now, I know all of these from personal experience, and it's ruined the boating day every single time. So, double check those things before you head out on the water, before you back down that ramp and go, and you'll have much more fun. And most important, have fun. Get out and enjoy your boat as often as you can, because as you know, life truly is better on a boat. Until next time, this is your friend in boating, Captain Matt.